Welcome to Shape by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. My guest today is Sandy Webster. She is the Executive Director of Dream Riders of Kentucky, which I absolutely love. Welcome, Sandy, to Shape by Faith.
Thank you, Theresa. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I met you recently. I was out there filming Project Volunteer with Randy Lanham, and I got to meet you, and I was just amazed at what you're doing there, and the participants that are there and the volunteers. There's a big team out there, just coming together to make dreams come true, and it just makes you happy just to be out there. I want to ask you a little bit about your background before we get into Dream Riders. So when did your passion for horses begin?
I would like to say at birth, but probably in my exposure was as a 4-year-old.
Oh, wow.
When I was brought to a home where I was to live through my beginning years through teenagerhood, and they had a boarding stable, and it was pretty amazing. Fortunately, I was probably the most hard work child that I know of at a very young age. However, I loved every minute of it. I think the work ethic that came from being on the farm and having to get to school with manure on my boots and having to deal with people teasing me with that, but still being able to come home and cry into the ponies' manes and be around the horses, shared their gifts with me, as well as the work ethic that came with being able to do that. And so I learned from a young age to care for the horses and get to know them. I'd like to say as people and as children of God, to be the gifts that they give. Before I was riding by the time I was 5, but which is still pretty young.
Yes.
But I learned the gifts they have to give, in the kindness that they give and the lessons they teach us prior to riding being a sport for me. And the other part of it that was really a blessing was the fact that our stable manager had post polio, and he walked. I never met him where I knew him as walking with anything but with 2 canes, and he was one of the most kind and generous and outgoing people that I have yet to meet, really. And he taught me a lot about perseverance and not letting anything get in the way and overcoming barriers.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you were exposed to horses, which is an amazing thing to have happen in your life at an early age. And sounds like you're around inspirational people that, we just need that little bit of encouragement as a child to prompt us to do what God is calling us to do. And it sounds like he was the right person for that. So when you began riding horses, did you do anything with that later as a teenager or as a young adult?
Yes, I went through what they call Pony Club, which is kind of like Brownies or Girl Guides, only it has a horse base to it, where you learn to be a good person as well as being responsible and giving back to other children. So they have all these testings that you have to do as you climb through your stable management and riding abilities. And they have the different levels of children teaching younger children or less experienced children. So then I fell in love with teaching, so which is still a big passion of mine. And so I did that, and I showed horses most of my younger years, and worked for a couple who did not have any children. So at age 7, I was showing Welsh ponies for people that imported them from Europe. And I was able to experience a lot of exposure to showing without any of the costs. And we did carriage driving, and I showed them on the line, which is trotting them up and down and being able to handle them, and then showing in just about every type of discipline that those ponies did. And they were supposed to be the versatility pony, so it gave me a lot of experience without the cost. And so I did that till I was in my teens. And then in my teens, I worked for a number of people that worked towards going to the Olympics. And so I rode all the young horses and a lot of the smaller horses because I'm still not very tall as well. And, that led to me wanting to be a jockey because I thought that was the only way I could afford to stay involved with horses because it can be a wealthy person's sport. However, so to work in the industry, I thought that was the way to go. And I did ride races for 11 years in 5 different countries. And it enabled me to travel and see the world. And at the same time, learn about therapeutic riding because what really happened was I loved being an athlete and I was actually the first woman jockey in Canada, which had its own challenges, just being the only girl in town. And
Right.
and I had to pray a lot to get through some of that because of the different challenges that go with it. But it took me to a number of other countries as a competitor. And I actually went to New Zealand and Australia representing United States so that they had a situation where they were opening up opportunities for women that had not had the type of job actively happening in those 2 countries. So I went as a jockey because that's what I was and
Mm-hmm.
spoke to the women's group about following your dream, not in a women's lib kind of a way, but
Mm-hmm.
in a believe in yourself and motivating way, and represented women riding racehorses at that point. And it made me really realize all the things that horses can do for us, even beyond riding and horsemanship, but also to open up doors for others.
Wow. I mean, I can't say enough, but wow, you've had a wealth of experience. A jockey, okay, is gosh, Sandy, first woman jockey in Canada. That's a big deal. And I cannot even imagine what you went through being the first woman jockey. Is that a hard life in general, being a jockey?
It is. It's a hard life partially because your hours are very odd. You start at 4 o'clock in the morning, which means you have to be up at 3, and physically, it's very very demanding. And then it's almost like being an entertainer in one way and an athlete in another because you have a following and you have people that are critical and other people that think you're a hero and really you're just another athlete that loves horses. And I also had to experience a lot of the toughness that where the horses are actually a vehicle, and I'd never believed in them being that because I grew up loving them as um, friends and acquaintances and a shared partnership. So that was difficult, and so I didn't really 100% fit in the
Mm-hmm.
backstretch, as they call it. And so I found my um, calmness in my through
Mm-hmm.
following and giving back to the community wherever I live, because you also travel a lot and you might spend 3 months in one place and then you travel and you basically follow the sun, and go from north to south throughout the different seasons. But also, what I did is I volunteered in therapeutic riding because I found a home with a community that I really felt that was more of a family,
Mm-hmm.
and giving back to others was something that was always a passion of mine. So I volunteered for the 11 years I rode races, and couldn't wait to get to the barn and help either the children or adults with disabilities and be a volunteer. So I have a real passion for the volunteers and feel like I have the empathy for helping people find their way through volunteering as well, which is a really important aspect of what Dream Riders does. But also, it's a part of my heart that I can't help to have beat for the volunteers and for what the gifts of giving back do for everyone, whether they're the giver or the one that's receiving as
Well,
well.
well, Sandy, we're going to take a really quick break because I don't want to stop, but we're going to have to stop and take a break, and we'll be right back with more Shape by Faith. Everyone stay tuned. Welcome back to Shape by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. And Sandy Webster, who has been doing just that, shaping her bodies and hearts for God's purposes as the executive director of Dream Riders of Kentucky. And wow, Sandy, you've lived just an amazing, fascinating life. I'm sure there were a lot of struggles that came with it. You grew up with horses, first woman jockey in Canada. You got into therapeutic riding, and I want to hear more about it. So what brought you to Owensboro, Kentucky, and what's the purpose and mission of Dream Riders?
Well, what brought me to Owensboro, Kentucky was I have been a consultant for the last 15 years after spending 25 years in Canada as a program director and executive director. And I found that it was a bigger passion to be able to start up full centers and help them grow wherever there was the opportunity and the need in the community. So I came to Owensboro after teaching a workshop in Bowling Green and having some of the board members attend that workshop, and they had asked me if I could be their next project to grow because of the needs in their community. So I accepted about a year and 3 or 4 months ago, and here we are in this wonderful place. Our mission is to provide individuals with physical, cognitive, social, and emotional needs an opportunity to experience the joy of riding and the therapeutic value of horses. And that aligns to what this community is really looking for. And we're delving into more work with mental health, especially with COVID, and the behavioral health with the schools and the different mental hospitals that are locally involved. And we have a large therapeutic riding program, which serves people with disabilities, both physical and cognitive. And then the emotional side of things is a bonus because we're always working on core values and trying to have people really look at themselves and how they can be the best human being they can be, both with the horses and with the volunteers, and then ultimately turn around and make that happen at home as well.
The horses themselves have unique personalities, don't they?
They sure do, each and every one.
So do you, when you have someone that's coming in to be a rider, do you kind of match them up? How do you do that with the horses and the participant?
Well, we do. The participants put in paperwork that we need to have to make sure that we understand their goals and their needs, whether it be physical, emotional, or cognitive. And then we do an assessment. And at that assessment, it sounds very official, but we actually, if it's a child, we play with them and go and wander through the arena and the barn and meet horses and look at what is it that they need when we want the participants' goals from their own perspective as well as their parents. And then all of our horses are different shapes and sizes and personalities. And so, for example, if someone had cerebral palsy and has increased tone or spasticity, then they need to ride a narrower horse so that it's a good fit. And if they are lacking confidence, for example, they may need a horse that's going to be very, very compliant and easygoing and show a lot of love, but not too much of an outgoing personality. So it depends on whether it's the emotional side or the physical side we're looking at. And then there's all the different horses training. So the level of their abilities, because we're looking at everything we do. This isn't what people can't do. This is about what they can. So we're always looking at producing the greatest ability that anybody can have, and that this is an opportunity to be the best they can be.
Absolutely. So you also have a lot of volunteers out there, of course, standing beside the horse and leading the horse. So I wanted you to talk about that. And I wanted to ask, do you have to be familiar with horses to be a volunteer, or do you train the volunteers in how to interact with the horses?
Well, we feel that nobody has to have any experience with horses. It is more important that you're dedicated to helping people in the community and be open-minded to learn. And so we do all the training with the volunteers here. So we have people that have absolutely never even seen a horse come and volunteer with us. And we have a fairly extensive training. And that training involves people, learning about people with disabilities, communicating with different people. We also utilize the open-mindedness of everyone so that they look at everyone with inclusion and not being judgmental of any way. Mm-hmm. So that in the horses, we put them through a training that is pretty extensive, but then also we have a mentorship program, because when the volunteers arrive, they're not ever going to know everything what to do, even though we think our training is pretty thorough, but people have to experience it and learn from what the horses give them. But also that team mentorship helps develop the culture of inclusion and helping others. So we have a great group of volunteers that help other volunteers so that they can feel really comfortable. And as they start to shine and be excited about what they see, and we also have all the volunteers stay with the same riders and stay with the same horses. So it's a team approach with all centered around what does the participant need.
Oh, and that's wonderful. And I got to witness that. And I'm telling you, Sandy, you've got something special out there. Our community has something special. There's such a peace and a calm in that arena. I don't know if you'd call it that or not. It's a beautiful, beautiful, what do you call that place where the horses stay? The barn? Or, I mean...
Yeah, it's the barn and the stable.
Okay, it's beautiful. I wanted you to talk about some of the ways a horse is therapeutic for someone with a disability.
Okay, well, I could go on forever, but I'll get the key points. Physically, the interesting thing about horses is that they have, when they're walking and someone's sitting on them, they have what we call a 4-beat walk, which means every foot hits the ground separately, and that's natural to them. And the input that back gives to someone that's sitting on the horse is it goes forward and back, side to side, and rotational. And that movement is therapeutic because from the person's pelvis to the top of their head, their muscles contract and co-contract in a way that replicates walking correctly. So we think about walking related to our legs, but that's only 50% of the body. The other half of our body is our swinging arms and our trunk control and back strength. And so that movement for someone that has a physical, say someone who has had a stroke or has cerebral palsy or has any form of hemiplegia or change in gait, then this puts the muscle memory, the correct muscle memory, back into their mind and their body. And then that, coupled with physical therapy, can actually have people walk who maybe we're told they would never walk, or they did walk and they do, to help them ambulate better. So that's the physical side, and that's pretty exciting stuff. And then emotionally, horses have what we call an emotional intelligence that is greater than a human. And that is because they rely on their instincts so greatly that we can read their body language through what their ears and eyes and muzzle and body language is doing. And they also show expression of relaxation and contentment very dramatically. So they might take a big sigh or blink their eyes or lick and chew. And all those things help people reflect or mirror on their expression, because the horses reflect on our emotions. So if you came in angry or impulsive, they would be tense. Or if you were relaxed and took a big sigh yourself, then they would follow suit. So it helps us with mental health work so that people look at themselves and give feedback that way.
That's so interesting. Wow.
It is. It really is.
We're going to take another quick break right here. So hold on. We'll be back with more Shaped by Faith. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Shaped by Faith, where we shape our bodies and hearts for God's purposes. Sandy Webster, Executive Director of Dream Riders of Kentucky, has been sharing with us what Dream Riders has to offer, and they have a lot to offer. And Sandy, I would love for our listeners to hear a few stories, maybe something that you would like to share about how Dream Riders has made a difference in a participant or a family member. I'm sure you've got a lot of stories, but we would love to hear some.
Okay. I think one that comes to mind that has happened in the last 6 months is we have a young man who has a physical disability, and he is has been nonverbal at up to his now, and he is 42 years old, and he recently lost his father. And at the funeral, he said his first word, and that was he said the word "whoa," which we
Mm.
used to have the horses stop, and we've been teaching him to sign, so he signed, and then he put up his fingers to above his ears and flicked them, which means horse. And so he also signed heart, and said to his aunt, who is now his caregiver, that his heart needed to go to the horse after
Oh.
the funeral. So they came directly here, and he asked in his signing if he could see his horse, and he went in, and he'd shown no emotion related to losing his father, and he went in and wrapped his arms around his horse, and he ambulates a little differently, but he stood up straight and tall and said, I'm going to get choked up, and he said,
Mm.
I promise, and then held his heart. And
Oh.
he meant that, as it turned out, when his aunt came back, he said he was telling his father that he was going to learn to talk. And
Oh.
so he's now saying, walk on and whoa, when we want the horse to stop and go. And he looked at one of our volunteers 2 weeks ago and gave her a high five and said, heart.
Oh
So
my goodness.
if it's taken 42 years, then that's a good thing. And he's been riding with us a couple of years now. And we've just been pushing to have him take more responsibility. And now he's able to express himself. So that's a story that I think hits everyone's heart.
Oh my
And
gosh, yes.
yeah, and we have several very young children who have said that have been told that they may never walk, and they are starting to go from their wheelchair to their walker after having ridden for the last year, and they work really hard at it. And we have been working on having them work really hard in their lessons so that they are able to follow the movement of the horse. And we had two of them in the last 4 months be able to walk with a walker as opposed to their wheelchair.
Oh, that
And
is wonderful.
yeah, their parents are enlightened by that, and feeling that there's a lot of hope in going forward as far as many things in their life.
I'm just amazed God uses, what he creates for his glory and for us. And he's using a beautiful horse to help people with their emotions and their physical bodies. He amazes me every single day, Sandy. um,
Yeah.
now, I would think that as a rider, it would help develop muscles, possibly in your legs, maybe strengthen your hips a little bit, and in the core. So, how does that work?
Well, the response while sitting on the horse, the passive movement of the horse causes a muscle memory in the contraction and co-contraction of the abdominals and the back muscles. And also, while they're riding, we do a lot of work with coordination of what we call the aids. And the aids are what we're born with to communicate with the horse, which is your legs, seat, hands, voice, and weight. So even some of the things we do as simply as making people recognize if they're sitting in the center of the saddle, that weight shift emulates things that they need to do in everyday life. It may be shifting in their wheelchair, or it may be that development of that strength to be able to help their parents if they are having difficulty physically, and being able to be independent, because everyone wants to be independent. And whether that's the confidence side of things or whether it's the physical makeup of just being stronger through riding and coordinating the aids.
Wow. So it's a great workout as well. And goodness gracious, I can really see where it would, as I'm listening to you, as it would really help develop all those muscles. And I mean, all things are possible, right?
That's right.
They can go from the wheelchair to the walker to walking. So what's next for you in Dream Riders of Kentucky, and how can people find out more information?
Well, I think what's next is for us to just keep serving our community in the areas that are most needy. And right now that is more so in the mental health area. I don't think COVID has helped anything with that, but we are partnering with the hospital and their have the behavioral health hospital, as well as the school system from a mental health perspective. And also we're having the rehab center from the hospital that are coming to do occupational therapy and physical therapy here. And they're coming because a lot of people have lost, I don't want to really say the word faith, but they have lost their determination to go forward and work on their own physical ability if they have had strokes or head injuries or an aneurysm, and they are what the therapists call therapy dead, and they need a motivation. So they will be coming out here to be motivated and work with all kinds of things. We have a therapy dog, and they're going to groom him, and they're going to work horses and do their exercises that they would need to do in the hospital, but do it here where the environment is very, very welcoming and fun. So if we can get some more people motivated just by being in a great environment, that would be helpful too. And so that's what's next for Dream Riders. We grew over 400% in the last year and 2 months, even with COVID. And we really are just trying to support what is needed in our community, so that this is a wonderful aspect of what Owensboro has to offer.
Well, you guys are doing some amazing things out there. So where can we find you on social media?
You can find us. We're on Facebook, and we also have our website is dreamridersofky.org, and our email is dreamridersofkentucky, all spelled out, at gmail.com, and our phone number is 270-613-0079.
Sandy, thank you so much for coming on Shaped by Faith. You are so enjoyable to talk with.
Thank you. So are you.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening. I'm Theresa Rowe. Everyone have a blessed day.